Okay, good evening. We're up to Yud Tes Amid Aleph. Just to go back to the Mishnah, we're discussing Harchakas Nezikin and distancing ourselves from the walls or boundary of our Machlokes Rav and Abaya. But the first case of the Mishnah was you have to distance yourself from the bar of your friend. You can't go ahead and dig Nevrechas Kaifsim, and which seems to be a ditch they would use for doing laundry. Now there were two ditches. The first one they would soak it in some stuff. The second one they would go ahead, put water in, and rub it and scrub it. So the second one, the water would spit out farther than the first one. Says the Mishnah, says the Gemara. Again, run your test on Aleph. Amar Rav Nachman. Amar Rabbi Baravua. Says Rav Nachman in the name of Rabbi Baravua. Lo yishanu elamin hamachamtzon. That is 3 tvachim is enough. That distance is from the initial bar where you're soaking it in some sort of detergent. Aval min had. I don't want detergent. Rashi tells you what the detergent is. Not something you would think. Aval min had nadyon, from the place where you'd rub it and scrub it and the water is spritzing out, dalet amis. So the Mishnah that said 3 tvachim is the initial ditch, but the second ditch, that would be 4 amis. Fred the Gemara Vanan Tanan Gimel Tvachim. We said Gimel Tvachim. Elolav Shmamina, right? Tanya Namihachi Nevrechas HaKaivsim dalet amis. Avanan Tanan Gimel Tvachim. Elolav Shmamina Kiderav Nachman. That there's 2 ditches. The initial ditch is 3 tvachim, and the one that you go ahead and meshafshet and scrub and water spritzing is 4 amis, 24 tvachim. This conversation did not take place as an explanation of our Mishnah, but certainly as a stira, yes, as a contradiction one to the other. Tanan nevrechas hakayvsim gimel tvachim, brisa v'tanan arba amis. There you have your stira. Rav Nachman as a teretz, not as a pshat in our Mishnah. Rabbi Ravu lekasha kamin amachmatzin. That the first one that is 3 tvachim, kamin hanedayon, which is 4 amis. He says the chilik openly. Ela imkein hirchik mitzvas amachamson. This brisa says the word mechamson. Until now we just in the vrechas hamayim. We didn't say here. We say mechamson. Mechamson and Kaisel Gimel Tfachim. So it says clearly the first Nevrechas Hamayim, which is the Chamson, rather than the one where you're going to rub, which is the Nadyon. Okay, the next part of the Mishnah was that you have to go ahead, the Sod Basid. Now let's go look back at the Mishnah, guys, for brevity's sake. Let's go back to the Mishnah on Yud Zayin Amid Aleph. These are different water cisterns. Now the Gemara is going to ask now, is this in addition to Hachaka or instead of Hachaka? In other words, I have an option, either distance myself 3 tefachim or going ahead and pitching it with lime, or no. In addition to Gimel Tfachim, I would have to pitch it with lime. The Gemara Mishnah continues, Umar chikim es hagefes ves hazevel ves hamelach ves hasid ves hasloyim. You distance these various objects from the wall. This is for a different reason. This is not because of moisture. This is because of fumes. Mikoislech shel chaveri shlosh tefachim oisod basid. So the Gemara is going to ask, the first one, is it Oisod Basid or Bisod Basid? That's what the Gemara is going to ask. Is it Sod Basid or Oisod Basid? Now, obviously, it makes sense to say it must mean the first one is Bisod Basid. Because if it's Oisod Basid, you should incorporate it together with the second statement. It must be, it's a separate din. The first din, where it's a din in moisture, then you'd have to do 2 things. Distance and in addition pitch it. The second one, which is a din in fumes, Gimel Tfachim, that distance would be enough, or Sod Basid, that would take care of it. So that's the dialogue of the Gemara that I just gave you. Says the Gemara. Back to Yutes Lamed Aleph. The Sod Basid, Iboilahu. And again, the first case, the case of what? Of the moisture cases, of Mevrechas Hamayim and Shiach and Noara. The Sod Basid Tanan, is it in addition to the Harchaka, you would need to pitch it? Dilma Oisad Basid. It's another option. Aside from going ahead a distancing, you could either go ahead and pitch it. Tanan, Pshita Desad Basid Tanan. It must be Pasha that it means in addition to the Harchaka, one must go ahead and pitch. Ditnan, the Isal Kedaitach, Pshita the Vesad Basid Tanan. The Ipsal Kedaitach, the Oisad Basid Tanan, Imkain Lervinu V'Lisninu. Go ahead, Ron, and learn it with the second case. Clearly, we saw the second case, according to the Girsa of our Mishnah, the case of Hevel, it was either or, Harchaka or Sod Basid. So if you're telling me the Reish is O Sod Basid, go ahead and lump them together as one din, because it's the same din, either Harchaka or pitch. Ellen must be, you know why you didn't lump them together? Because the first case, you need both, Harchaka and Sod Basid, rather the second case where you have an option of either or. Says the Gemara, no. Dilma mishum loy dami hayazeka lahayazeka. The reason you lumped them together is because the hazekas were different. Reisha hazeka the metuna. The reisha the hezek is moisture. Seifa hazeka the hevla, and the seika is the hezek hevel. So don't bring me a raya from the fact that the Mishnah said oisad basid and you didn't lump them together. It could be the reason we went ahead and separated them is because of the different way they damage. Either the first case they damage by moisture, the second case they damage by what? By hevel. But indeed, it could be the first case, the halacha would also be either or. So you weren't paisha the shaila. Toshmal, let's try to be paisha the shaila. Rabbi Yehuda Selah Babi Yadayim. We met this the other day. This is earth that is very loose, and one is able to easily go ahead and shovel it. Zeh chayfa boiroi mikan, v'zeh chayfa boiroi mikan. Zeh marchik gimel tefachim v'sod basid. V'zeh marchik gimel tefachim v'sod basid. Okay. Now, what's the? How can we place it? Taima. The reason you need both is the babi yadayim. It's very brittle earth, so to support it, you would need, in addition to harchaka, you would need v'sod basid. Haloi babi yadayim. But if it was regular earth, not such brittle earth that you can literally shovel with your hands, loy. You would not need Sod Basid. So let's be Paisha to Shaila in the Reisha. It's enough to go ahead, what? And Harchako or Sod Basid. Says Mulai. Who adin the Afagav Loy Babi Yadayim. Nami Sod Basid. Ken Zayin, the diak you made is not the correct diak. Don't make the diak Sod Basid needs both. But if it's not, don't make a dark that Babi Yadayim needs both. But regular earth would either or. No, regular earth also would need both. So why you learn the case of Babi Yadayim? Babi Yadayim is strichle. The Chiddush Babi Yadayim is Salkadai Chamin, I would have thought. Even the Babi Yadayim, the boy Ravcha Tfei, I might think you mean more than Gimel Tfachim. We had this yesterday. Kamash Malon, that what? No. So we weren't Paisha the Shaila in the Mishnah, whether it's in addition to Harchaka, you need Sabasid, or we weren't Paisha the Shaila. Okay. The next case in the Mishnah was Marchikin Esakef. Now let's look in the Mishnah again, because it's important to get the various materials under discussion. Marchikim Esakefes. Gefes is the leftovers of olives after they're pressed. Ves hazebel is fertilizer. Ves hamelach is salt. Ves hasid is lime. Ves hasloyim we said are coals. Right? Mikoisel shechaber shloishet tvachim. Oisad basid. Good. Now says the Gemara. There's guys in Masech Shabbos. There's a parak called Bamet Toimnim, right? Bamet Malikin, Bamet Toimnim. That one way again, the way they would keep their food hot was al yidei hatmana, literally insulation. One is not allowed to go ahead, Ron, and insulate with something that is moisef hevel, that would make it hotter because it's a of stirring coals. Okay, the materials discussing for Toimnim, we're going to contrast with the materials we discussed, Linyan Hachakas Nezikin. They're very similar, and we're going to ask, how come we don't say we're not consistent by both? That's the mahalach of the Gemara now. Says the Gemara. We learned in Masechta Shabbos. What could you go ahead and use b'toimim, and what can't you? Ein toimim. Again, these things are moisef hevel. Loy begefes. Let's check it off. Do we have that? Guys, by us. Do we have gefes? Check. Zevel? Check. Melach? Check. V'loy basid? check. V'loy b'choil, X. We don't have choil. Bein lachin, whether the chol is wet, bein yevation or it's dry, or this could be going on all of those things. Ma'ishna hacha diktani slayim. What's the difference that by us we learned racks, v'loy ketani choil, and we didn't mention choil. U'ma'ishna hasa mesech the Shabbos diktani choil, v'loy ketani slayim. So again, an interesting Gemara, not answering any shilas, just contrasting and comparing two Mishnayos and why we learned some in one way and some the other way. So Rabbi Yosef, ain't dark and shall be the adam lahapim b'slayim. You know why we didn't mention slayim by hatmana? Because no person usually goes ahead and uses rocks to go ahead and insulate. Amalei Abaya, v'chidaken shel adam lahapim b'gizeit semer. Is the person use tufts of wool to go ahead and be matmin with? Will a shayna shel agaman or purple dyed wool? The Tanya, Taimim b'gizeit semer. One is permitted to go ahead and insulate with gizeit semer, with sipeit semer. There are different types of process along the way. Ubashayna shel agaman, uvemuchin, some type of material like cotton. They metalton I say it's muktzah. So therefore, you see these things are not normal, and they were learned that you could do atmana with. So your teretz that you don't usually use slayim does not hold water, because here's things also that's not usually used, and we did go ahead and list them. Elam Rabaya Yagid Love Reyai. Let one friend say on the other. In other words, by our Mishnah it mentioned slayim, so Yagid Love Reyai. Then therefore it's not unnecessary to mention it by Shabbos. Of course, it's included from our Mishnah. The Mishnah in Shabbos mentioned chayil, and therefore it's not necessary to mention it here in Masechta Baba Basra. Yagid Love Reyai. Let its contemporary Mishnah go ahead and tell you the list by the other Mishnah. So it listed Slayim here and Huadin, it's by Shabbos. It listed Chol by Shabbos, Huadin by Baba Basra. Tana Hacha, Slayim, Huadin L'chayil, Tana Hasan Chayil, Huadin L'Slayim. Amalei Rava, Yagid Love Reyai. If you're telling me we're going to use the concept of one Mishnah testifying to another Mishnah, why did you have to just leave out one thing? List all the materials either by Shabbos or by Baba Basra, right? And learn one by the other one. In other words, let's say you have 5 objects mentioned here and 5 objects mentioned here. And out of the 5, one slayim goes back here and one chayil goes back there. That's not when you say Yagid Love Reyai. Yagid Love Reyai say the following. You list 10 subjects over here, 9 subjects over here, and 1 over here. And then you say, you know why you didn't list these 9 over on this one? Because Yagid Love Reyai, this one will be Magid this one. So in other words, I'm not buying this teretz. The teretz of Yagid Love Reyai is used when you have a more comprehensive list in one place and a less list in the other place, and then Yagid Love Reyai. But when you have a comprehensive list in both places and it's one thing, then we don't say Yagid Love Reyai. So back to the original question: why didn't we mention Sloyamat by Shabbos, and why don't we mention Chayil by Baba Basra? Says the Gemara. Okay, Ella Lashon Charata Amarava Hasam Hainu Taima. The reason over there in Masechta Shabbos we didn't mention racks. The like Katani Slayim Mishum the Mishtache Leila Kadera. 2 pshatim, they either break the kadera or they rust the kadera. So therefore, it doesn't make sense to use it. It's going to ruin your pot. In other words, it could insulate very well, but the reason it's not listed because it's not practical. And Hacha over here, why don't we list chayil? Hainu time with like Katani chayil, because we did list chayil. Now the chayil is going to be because of wetness. Mishum the mechamimi chayim, right? In things, it heats up things that are hot. Umakriri karer, and it keeps things cold that are cold. So the reason we didn't list chol over here, guys, because chol there would not be a din of harchaka. There would not be a din of harchaka. By something that's hot, the chol insulates the hot. Therefore, in the Masechta Shabbos, where it's a din of keeping the heat in, we learned chol. Over here, what are you going to tell me? Distance chayil from the wall, the coolness is good for the wall. Therefore, there's no reason to go ahead and be marchik. You don't have to. So by Shabbos, we didn't list slayim. It's not practical. And by Basra, you didn't list Chayil because it's not true. Because Chayil, in fact, you would not have to be marked from the wall. Read the Gemara about 20 Rabbi Chayil. He did learn Chayil Rabbi Shia. I just told you it's all pshat. It's good for the wall. It doesn't harm it. It says Gemara Hasam b'metuna. There it's what? It's wet. It's moist. If it's moisture, the moisture is not good for the wall. So Rabbi Shia said, if it's moist Chayil, you have to distance it. Says Tanri Nami Lisni. If that's the case, why did not Tana learn Chayil if it's wet? Says I'm going to look me about tuna and say it's speaking about it's wet. Why did it leave it out? Says it listed water. In other words, if you're just listing moisture, it listed a canal. So Mamela, I would know if it's a Chayil, it's a wet dirt. Keep it away. You're not giving me a good teretz. What are you telling me? That I don't have to list Chayil because I list Amas Hamayim, because I list the canal. Well, you listed a canal and you said a detergent ditch. If you're being so selective about moisture and therefore you don't list Chayil because you list Amas Hamayim, so don't list the detergent ditch. Says I got to list the canal and I got to list the detergent ditch. Okay. In other words, there's a chiddush in each one. You know the reason you have to distance Amas Hamayim mishum dekavi, because it's there all the time. A person makes an irrigation ditch, he keeps it there. That's there, and therefore you have to be marchik from your kaisel of your friend. It seems that detergent ditches was subject to them, being moved, and therefore it's not kaiveya. I would say the loikavi emaloi. I would say you don't have to distance kamash malan mishnah, even though it's not kaiveya, even though it's not there all the time. Nonetheless, you have to distance yourself. So therefore, you had to learn Nevrechas Hamayim, despite the fact that you learn Amas Hamayim. The Itana Nevrechas HaKoivsim, I said Nevrechas Hamayim, Nevrechas HaKoivsim, a detergent ditch, Mishum the Kavui B'kaimi. The water maybe is more harmful to the wall because it's stagnant, it's always there. Avlamas Hamayim, that the water is flowing, maybe it's not so destructive. So it's tzricha. So there's a tzricha for both. But the teretz holds the reason why we didn't list chayil is because we listed moisture things, and therefore chayil will be included in Amas Hamayim. And we learn Amas Hamayim, the Frechas HaKoivsim, because of the tzrichas of both of them. And the reason we didn't learn Sloyim in the Sefta Shabbos by what? By Matvaimnim is because it's not practical to go ahead and break your pot or rush your pot because using a Sloyim as a insulating material. Okay, so let's continue back in the Mishnah. Machikim es hazroyim ves hamachreisha ves mei raglayim and a koisel shlosh tefachim. Distance your seeds, your plowing, and latrine, urine. Not latrine, just urine. Min a koisel shlosh tefachim. Okay, now the Gemara is going to ask, before you plant, l'chayra you have to plow. So it would seem to be understood, why do you have to Israel? Once I have to distance myself for the act of plowing, memela, the seeds that I put in there, I'm distancing already. Why do you list separate things? Fred the Gemara Kasha. 3 lines from the bottom. Zeroyim typically mishum machreisha. Zeroyim, why do you have to list it? Go ahead, and you can understand that you have to be marchik because you have to plow before you plant. Says Gemara Parlas Yad. It's speaking about where you can use a shovel, and therefore it's not, in other words, it's earth that you can use a shovel for. You don't have to go ahead and plow. Therefore, despite the fact that I'm not plowing, I still have to distance myself because of the act of Zuriya. And we said yesterday, by planting, we said it's going to soften the earth and make the wall unstable, correct? And it's not because the Zroyim go ahead and grow to the sides, right? And we said that it's going to go ahead and soften the earth, and the male of the earth is going to go ahead. And we didn't say it yesterday. Actually, we're going to say it. Actually, we're going to say it today. Sorry, I got yesterday, today. So it's all Torah Kedosha. So now, v'tepikle mishum, okay, about machreisha v'tepikle mishum zroyim. So plowing should be also because you have to plant. It's speaking there were trees there, and you're not chayrish for the purpose of planting. You're chayrish to go ahead and improve the trees. So, in other words, I can have Zriya without Charisha, Yad, and I can have Charisha without Zriya, existing trees that are there. I would plow around them to improve their roots. You have to water them, and watering we saw is moisture. It's not good. So why do I need to tell me Zriya and Charisha? Why do you tell me that? I need to water the Zrayim, and therefore Mamela I have to distance myself. It says Lim Tara Shemayim Tishna Mayim. It drinks the waters of the rains of heaven. In Eretz Yisrael, it had the din of a Beis Habal, not a Beis Hashlachin, and therefore what? You didn't have to water it. Hashem sent water. In Eretz Yisrael, Hashem sent water. Okay. L'meima Dizroyim Amid Beis Litzadin Kamishtarshi. Now it's mashma over here, fellas, in the Havmina of the Gemara, that it's the seeds that are harmful to the wall. The reasons I have to distance myself 3 tefachim from the wall, here's our problem. The seeds are going to grow horizontal, and they're going to damage the wall. That's the Havamina, that the seeds are going to grow horizontal, and they're going to damage the wall. It says the Gemara, L'meima that studin kart mishtarshi, they root horizontally. For Tanan, we have a Mishnah in Kalayim, Hamavriches Agefen. Now, what they do is sometimes in planting, not that I'm a farmer, this thing called mavrich, where you go ahead, the root comes up and you stick it back in the ground, and it will grow a new tree, and then you cut the root and you have a new tree. That's seems to be a way of creating saplings. So mavrich is the act of taking the existing root and re-sticking it back in the ground. Hamavriches Agefen ba'aretz, im ein al gaba afa shloisha tefachim. If you don't have on top of it afa 3 tefachim, lo yavi zera aleha. Don't go ahead and plant something else upon it, because then you'd have a client problem. You'd have a client problem, correct? So in other words, if I go ahead and put it in and there's less than 3 tefachim of earth, I can't plant something on top. I can't plant something on top. Betoni Allah, aval zareya esat stodin, elich ve'elich. You can plant on the sides of it. Now, guys, if you're telling me that seeds go to the sides, then you'd have a problem. It's going to have a problem, a client problem. Fellas, if this is the root, and I'm planting over here, and it goes to the side, I'm going to have a client problem. So you see, from here, you don't have a client problem. If this is a wall, why can't my Mizroyim be over here? It doesn't grow by the side. Just like linyan in Kalayim is not a problem. Linyan hachokas nezikin, it also shouldn't be a problem, because again, it can't grow to the wall. You see from the Mishnah in Kalayim that we can ascertain that Zroyim grow down. They don't grow to the sides. Okay, says the Gemara, you're right. So Amrav Chagav b'Shem Rabbi Yosi pnei shemachlidim es hakarka u'maylim afa tichuach. What seeds do, they grow down, but they weaken the ground. And as a result of weakening the ground, it's going to cause the wall to become unstable. In other words, in the kasha, we thought it's the Zroyim themselves that impact the wall. That's not what happens. The Zroyim impact the land, and the mela, the instability of the land, that it's softer now, that will make the wall weaker. That's the difference. So you're right. Linear Kalayim, clearly you compare to the side, because the seeds are going to grow down. They're not going to go to the sides into the vine. And therefore, it's not a client problem. And therefore, we're proven. So the reason you're marchik 3 tefachim is not because the roots are going to damage the wall. It's their roots that will go ahead and weaken the earth. And since they're going to weaken the earth, right? Since they're going to weaken the earth, they're going to go ahead and weaken the wall. Geschmack is anything. Vesmei raglayim min hakoisel gimel tefachim. And you distance yourself, mei raglayim gimel tefachim. Mashma, a person can urinate within 3 tefachim of the wall, but you can't urinate on the wall. Amar Rabba Barachana, mutal adam lahashtin mayim b'tzad kaisloi. It's permitted for a person to go ahead and urinate on a wall. Shel chaveiroi. Dichsiv, if it karti la'achav mashtin bakir, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I will go ahead and cut off achav mashtin bakir, all males who are mashtin bakir, v'oitzer, and their wealth, v'ozlev, and their animals, Yisrael. So you see that you could be mashtim bakir. But anan tanan vesmei raglayim and akoisel shleish tefachim. You have a kasha. How can you say you can be mashtim bakir? You can urinate on the wall. It says you have to distance yourself to tefachim. It says mahasam b'shayftim. There is speaking about you gathered it together in a pot, and therefore you're spilling it out, a bunch of urine, that you can't throw directly on the wall. That you have to distance 3 tefachim. But to urinate directly on the wall, that you could do. That you could do. I'll just share with you a very funny story. It just came to mind. I think there used to be Time magazine, and what was the other one? Newsweek? Newsweek. Okay. Many years ago, this is a classic. They led us to the editor, and the guy wrote a whole anti-Israel thing. And he signed his name off, Abdul Mashtin Bakir. He signed it off, Abdul Mashtin, M-A-S-T-N, Bakir. So they, of course, didn't get anything, and every Jew in the world could not stop laughing. Abdul Mashtin Bakir. It sounds like, some Arabic name. It was very, very funny. And a tashma. Right? A person should not urinate on the side of the kaisel of his friend, unless he distances himself 3 tefachim. It's a wall of brick. Of stone, you only have to distance yourself. The kama, how much is that? Is a tefach. Okay, so if it's a brick wall, 3 tefachim. If it's a stone wall, then what? It's made of stones. Then it's a tefach. If it's one single stone, mutter. It's mutter to go ahead and urinate. Now this is a problem because Rabbi Bar Chana said you can urinate directly on the wall. Here we see you have to distance yourself into 3 tefachim or a tefach. The only wall you'll be able to urinate on is a tsunma, correct? So you have a stira. This is a kasha on Rabbi Bar Chana. Rabbi Bar Chana said you're permitted to urinate on a wall. The din of gimel tefachim is only when it's together in a pot. Over here, we're not speaking about a pot. We're speaking about the act of urination. And nonetheless, we're saying that you can't do it. Kasha and Rabbi to yufta on the Amoira Rabbi Bar Chana to yufta. He brought a pasuk. Pasuk hachi kamar. Afilu midi the darchel leshnune bekir. Even those creatures that normally urinate against the wall, loishav kinan le. I'm only vova achav. Umay niu is kalba, a dog. So here's where you touch the pasuk, guys. Go back. V'chrati la'achav. I'll cut off from achav. Mashnim bakir. You thought it was males. You know what it means? Even animals that urinate against the wall, dogs, we won't. If Achav's dogs also will not continue to exist. Now, you could have answered the yufta of Rabbi Rav Chana easily. You could have said Rabbi was saying is then by a wall that's a tsunma. Remember, there's 3 walls. There's a brick, there's avonim, and there's a tsunma, a whole rock. So you look at Taisvis, the second Taisvis from the top. The yufta the Rabbi Rav Chana, you can't possibly give a teretz. The chikama Rabbi Rav Chana bitsunma chada. It's a wall that's one piece which you could urinate against. He should have said that openly. It's too vague. It's ikachasim and aseifa. It's meaning it's missing. You'd have to go ahead and explain that. You couldn't leave it up to the person to ascertain that. He dashes from the pasuk, and the pasuk is saying, "I'm not leaving you over anyone that's mashtim bakir. Anyone doesn't make a difference which wall it is." From the pasuk, and therefore you couldn't give the teretz, and therefore it's a tiyufta on Rabbi Rav Chana. And the pasuk's not a raya because the raya is saying that even dogs will not be left over from Acha. The Gemara now goes ahead and it digresses, discusses din in Tumah V'Taira. We'll see why tomorrow. You have two houses. You have a window, and the window. This has a window. This has a window, and there's a mace in this house. So the mace, if it's not a hefsek, is going to bring the tumah from this house through into the window into this house. Good. Now we're discussing stuffing up the window. If there's a barrier that stuffs up the window, then the tumah would not go ahead and be transmitted from that house to that house. So the discussion is the barrier of that's in the window. Okay, that's the discussion. Says the Gemara. Amar of Tuvi bar Kisna, Amar Shmuel. Rakik is some type of bread or cake that's very thin, a wafer. In other words, if the chaloin is opening a tefach, then the tumah goes through. If it's less than a tefach, then not. So the rakik is in there, and it made it less than a tefach. So therefore, it's not memayit because we'll consider it that it's not there. We'll consider the rakik as if it's not there. Why? Because since the rakik is reila achila, it's not considered batal to the house. So in other words, you're going to take it and eat it. We won't say it fills up the hypothetically is filling up the window and stuffing up the window. It wouldn't say that. My area rakik afilu avanami. If that's the case, that it's you're eating it, why did you dafka speak about a rakik, which is a small, thin one? Why don't you speak about a nice guzunta piece of bread, right? Says the Gemara, "Lo mi boy come." You don't need to tell me. Lo mi boy rakik ava. The key in the ichzele, a person is seen to eat this. Lo mevatale is not going to mevatle it to the window. Ava rakik the memoyas. A rakik, I guess it gets what? It's moyas. Since it's very small and there's moisture from the wall, it's going to go ahead and it's going to make it disgusting. So I would think, guys, since it's disgusting, I will leave it there. And if I'm not going to take it, I might have a havamina that it should go ahead and fill the void of tefach and thus be a hafsaka, chatzitza, tuma. Kamash malon, no. Kamash malon, that it's a food. So I might think, I might think you're mevatel it. Kamash malon not. More of a tapulate to have it lay davishu makabel tuma. In other words, forget about that you might take it and eat it, and it's disgusting. It's anything that's makabel tuma can't be mevatel the tuma, and food stuff is makabel tuma. So what's the chiddush over here? That it's moyis, and maybe you'll leave it there, even if no matter how moyis it is, it's makabel tuma. If it's makabel tuma, it can't be a chatzitza. It can't be a chatzitza. As I read the Gemara. And for the Gemara Shnilish May Paris, this rakik was not needed with water. It was needed with what? With fruit juice. In order to be Makabel Tumah, fellas, it has to be needed with one of 7 liquids. Yad Shochadam, right? Yad Shochadam is the acronym for Yayin, Devash, Shemen, Cholov, Tal, Dam, and Mayim. So that's the acronym for one of those 7 liquids. Good? If you don't have those 7 liquids, you can't. May Paris is not one of the 7 liquids. So therefore, the only reason it would be Als Kabel Tuma, it would be a chatzitza. The only reason it's not a chatzitza is why? It's because it's something that you're going to eat, and therefore you'll take it. And since you'll take it, it's not mevatel to the wall. So it can't be Als the Tuma aspect. It's got to be one that it's at the food aspect. Mesivei, Kupa Malaya Teven, you have a box that's full of straw. And a barrel that is full of dried figs that is not the figs that are in the window or the window. We look. If you go ahead and take away the chavias, take away the kupa, in other words, they're able to fill the void even without the material around it, even without the barrel and or the box around it. Then it would be a chatzitza. If not, they're not chaytzisin. Good? They're not chaytzisin. That's what the Gemara says. Reading more of a teven chazi l'mehem masai. Teven mad is chazi to his behema. So we see even on an object that you're not mevatel can be chaytzitz. And that's kasha the Shmuel. Again, what does Shmuel say? Shmuel said that a material that you're not mevatel, right, can be a chatzitza. Over here you see that you mevatel it, nonetheless, it's not, it could be a chatzitza. It's seen to your animal. You see, nonetheless, that even though you could take it away, it could be what? A chatzitza. Shmuel had said that anything that could be taken away is not a chatzitza. Here, Tevin guys, you're telling me it's a good chatzitza, right? The only criteria is whether it fills the space. If the Tevin fills the space, it's a good chatzitza, right? Why does Shmuel say? If you have a rakik there, why isn't it a good chatzitza? Because it could be taken away and eaten. The Tevin could be given to your animal. Yet you say it's a good chatzitza. You hear the kasha on Shmuel. Again, one more time. Says Shmuel, if it's something that can be taken away to be eaten, it's not a good chatzitza. Can the tevin be taken away? Absolutely. Why? Give it to your animal. Yet why does it say in the Mishnah? It's a good chatzitza. Kasha on Shmuel. Says the Gemara, Bisaria. It's speaking about the putrefied, disgusting tevin. Therefore, it can't be taken away. Says the Gemara, Chazi Latina. It could be taken away because I could use it for brick filler. I can use it in the making of cement, clay. I can use to hold it together. I can use the straw. Says the Gemara, this say no, it has thorns in it, and therefore you can't use it. Says the Gemara, Chazi Lasaka. Even though it's what? It's Chazi Lahasaka, you could use it as a fuel source. So again, it could be taken away. Kasha and Shmuel. Says Gemara B'matuna, it's wet. So all these cases, the teven that's batal, you've taken away the excuse of the possibility of being taken away. And the mela, since it can't be taken away, it's a good chatzitza, as long as it can stand there. Good? But Enochanami Shmuel is held serve. Shmuel is held serve. That something that could be taken away is not a chatzitza. So a kick, which can be taken away, is not a good chatzitza. Says the Gemara, Chazil Asaka Gadol, even if it's wet, you can take it and put it in in a small fire, it won't start up. But you have a big fire, it can be used. Says the Gemara, Chesed Gadol Shchichi. Chesed Gadol is not Shchichi. Okay, so you dealt with, there was two cases, guys. Two cases. One, there was a kupa of teven. Two, there was a chavius of groigris. So you went ahead and you challenged Shmuel from the kupa shel teven. We're ascertaining that was speaking about putrefied, wet teven, and therefore it's you can't use it, and therefore it's going to stay as long as it can stand. Now let's take the second part, the chavius of groigris, and use that to challenge Shmuel. Good. Says the Gemara. Groigris hachazile, person can eat it. So if you can eat it, you're going to take it away. So how can it be chatzitza in the window to stop the tumah from going through? Amashmuel here hit rifu. It's speaking about their wormy. They're speaking about their wormy, and since they're wormy, you're going to leave it there. They're speaking about it's wormy. Okay, so this barrel, exactly what's under discussion? So picture a barrel, and you tell them the barrel seems to be a problem. A barrel is something that's makabel tumah, right? Barrel's makabel tumah. So therefore, the barrel was always a problem. The barrel was a problem. And therefore, the whole shaila is the barrel uses what as something that can support the food stuff. Now, if the barrel, the opening of the barrel is facing the outside, he gufa techutz. Let the barrel itself be a chatzitza. Again, what are we speaking about? We're speaking about a klicheres. In other words, guys, picture this. Here's the house, and the mace is in this house. Here's your window, and now I have a barrel over here. Now, if the barrel's opening is facing this way, we know a klicheres is only matama from its inside. So why don't we let the barrel itself be a chatzitza? Again, if it's something that's makabel tumah, then it can't be chaytzitz. But this can't be makabel tumah because the opening of the barrel is facing away. The opening of the I'm not going to tell you who that was, but it's a member of the share who seldom comes. Anyway, so guys, you here, listen. You have a barrel. The opening is this way, and the mace is is over here. So why do you need the tevin and the groigris to be the chatzitza? The barrel itself can be chatzitza. Why do you tell me it's makabel tumah? It can't be makabel tumah because you only makabel from the inside. So it's like he gufa techetz. The klicheres ain't a matam megaboy. El must be the puma legav. It must be the opening of the barrel is to the inside, and therefore it would be makabel tumah from the mace. And therefore, I had to have the teven and or the groigris be the chatzitza. Be by the same loylam the puma lebar. It's speaking with openings to the outside. And we're not speaking about a barrel of. We're not speaking right. You're not speaking. It's not speaking about an earthenware. You're speaking about metal. Metal's matama what from? Metal's matama, right? Itself. Okay? You good? Let's see Taisvis. He gufa techutz. Let the barrel itself be a chatzitza. And now we think it's an earthenware barrel. V'tema, hechi techutz, haloi mevat loy hasam. It's not makabel tumah, right? It's not. Why? Because the barrel is facing towards the outside. Does the person leave a barrel or kli in a window? No. So if you don't do it, you can't say it's mevatel to close up the space there. You don't do that. Says the Gemara V'tiritzri, Rabbi Mordechai, the Kiman Shes Rifu HaGroigris, since you're telling me the Groigris is what is rotted, Gama Chovius Neskal, Gol Mavatloi. Okay, the barrel's rotted, you'll be Mavatl what? You'll be Mavatl that as well. Mavatl that as well. Aval Koshalari, the Perik Beis the Shabbos, the Omar Shepakues. Okay, we're going to get a little lost over here. Go down a few lines. Ulari, the Klicheres Leiboy Bittel. Klicheres does not need Bittel in order to be Chatzitza. El Shapechaitzets. Afagav Loi Mavatale. But the Tanla Kamon, the Klicheres Memayet Bechaloin, Uparach Klicheres Achazile, Hasamai Bimamayet Chaloin Mikashir. Okay, so he's a Chiddush, he's saying a Chiddush that a Klicheres does not need Bittel. All the Shaila then for is Tuma. If the opening is to the outside, it's not Matama.